Feisty John Lilith will execute her enemies at point-blank range, and today I'm here to tell you how to build her best. My name is Juice, and let's get into it. So what echoes does this esteemed lady of the Montelli family desire? None other than 5-piece Frosty Resolve. This is her tailor-made set, so naturally it works wonders on her. A majority of Carlotta's DPS output counts as skill damage, so the 2-piece works wonders for her. Same goes for the 5-piece, which is perfectly synergistic with her entire kit. Farm this for her as soon as possible. Sadly, 5-piece Freezing Frost is forever doomed to be a Ling Yang set. It works on Carlotta, but it's significantly worse than her main 5-piece and loses out to all of her mix and match sets. It'll be a fine placeholder until you can manage to farm the new set for her though. 2-piece mix and match sets for her include 2-piece attack percent, glacial percent, and skill percent. Her main animal will be the Sentry Construct, thanks to how it provides Carlotta with an additional 12% skill damage bonus and glacial damage bonus when put in her main slot. There's no reason to go for any other animal on her. You'll end up using the Lumen Scale Construct if you use Freezing Frost. However, that's not because you want to. Sentry is better, but you can't obtain Sentry on Freezing. As for main stats, simple. Go for 4 cost crit percent, 3 cost glacial percent, 3 cost glacial percent, 1 cost attack percent, and 1 cost attack percent. A fairly standard setup. However, do note that using attack percent on your 3 costs isn't all that much worse than using glacial percent, which I would say is pretty relevant at the moment, considering that the set is new and we're gonna have to make do with what we can get our hands on. As for stat goals, go for 70 to 290 on Sig, 70 to 220 on non-Sig, 2000 attack, and 1700 to 1800 attack if you're on a crit percent 4-star. There's nothing too out of the ordinary when it comes to the stats that she builds. It'll all just be a matter of farming up some good echoes now that we have an entirely new set to tackle. You want to go for 2000 attack regardless of whether you're on a 5-star or 4-star weapon, because most 4-star weapons feature a hefty attack percent substat. In the case that you're using a 4-star weapon with a crit main stat, you can get away with 1700 to 1800 attack instead. It's pretty rough how mid Freezing Frost is, but it'll still be usable until we can all get our hands on 5-piece Frosty Resolve. As her family's executioner, she naturally needs a good weapon to get the job done. So what'll her finest picks be? None other than Last Dance. An elegant weapon for a truly elegant lady. You get a stupidly high amount of crit damage from it, not to mention the wild amount of skill percent within the weapon's passive. Obviously this was tailor-made for her. It doesn't get much better than this. Static Mist will also be surprisingly decent on her. Sure, it's nowhere near the level of Last Dance, but considering that it's mostly just a stat stick, it's surprisingly competent on her. Plus, crit rate. You'll love to see it. Definitely makes her way easier to build for sure. Thunderbolt isn't half bad either. Providing skill damage is huge considering that's the main meat of Carlotta's kit. Excellent 4-star option for her if you have it. Undying Flame is impressive on her too, thanks to the solid amount of skill percent that you get out of the passive. Otherwise, as you'd expect, it's mostly a nice stat stick. Carlotta is capable of applying a debuff in her kit, so this passive was actually tailor-made to suit her. This splendid craftable will be your best, completely free-to-play friendly non-gacha option, so if you're looking for an accessible weapon to use on her, then look no further than Romance and Farewell. Revelistic Jet is mostly a good stat stick, not much else to add here. Nova Burst is in the same situation. If you genuinely don't have any of the weapons that I mentioned, then sure, you can use Guardian Pistols, but try to get an upgrade as soon as possible, since being on a 3-star weapon with 3-star tier stats is rough, dude. She has a decent amount of weapon options. As always, if you can manage to pull for her primary weapon, then do so because it will be far better than any other option. However, any of the 4-star stat sticks should be fine. Who'll be trying to get onto the Montelli family's good side as they pair up with Carlotta? Well, Joja is going to be your absolute best partner in crime, no questions asked. This synergy is as strong as it gets. The Silly Painter is the best skill and glacial buffer in Weathering Waves, and what do you know, Carlotta has stakes in both of these aspects, so she immediately ends up being your best in slot premium partner. Joja is also one of the easiest characters to execute in terms of setup, and if you press jump very quickly after every time you use her skill, you're able to effectively jump cancel Joja's animations. Her own sub DPS is quite nice in Carlotta's teams too. This is a match made in the Imperator-ordained heaven. Using the Painter with the Mafia Lady is such a crazy increase, it's unreal. Sanhua will be your best bet in terms of a 4-star replacement. Her rotations are quick, her concerto is fast, and she has some attack percent buffing in her S6. While she may not provide any Carlotta-specific buffs, she still ends up being her best 4-star bet thanks to how quick her rotation is. Sanhua's really out here emphasizing the importance of quick rotation times, huh? Yang Yang is an incredible second slot option for Carlotta too, fixing her AoE issues a little bit, and also giving her energy. She can be played incredibly fast as well if you're willing to practice with her, and can even end up beating Sanhua if you play her well. Lumi works too, mostly due to her skill buffing. However, she's far behind Joja in every single way. Even so, she'll be a competent choice if your Sanhua is already in use and you don't have or want the Silly Painter. I also personally find her to be a bit clunky, but that's more of a subjective statement. And while I've heard a ton of people suggest Tao Chi, I sadly think that she's too much of a clunkfest to be worth using. Sure, the skill buffing is 100% there, but it comes at the cost of having a stupidly long Concerto rotation. Her field time is what seriously holds her back. I suppose it works by technicality, but I have a very hard time recommending it due to its drawbacks. Use any of the other second slot options if you can. In terms of her final slot, both Shorekeeper and Verena work fine. They will always work fine, because those two are some of the most universal final slot supports in the game. However, I'd like to give S6 Baichi her flowers here. She really isn't too bad as a 4-star option for Carlotta. The Mafia Lady is actually one of the characters who is able to utilize S6 Baichi best. It's great that we finally have a good 5-star Glacio DPS now, since all of these previously useless Glacio-related buffs are actually pretty useful now. Then time for this elegant lady's rotation. It goes a little something like this. On her first rotation, you want to skill before you use her supports. Then after her supports, you want to intro, skill, plunge, forte heavy attack, use her echo, use her ult, bang once, bang twice, bang thrice, final bang, then launch her finisher, skill, then launch her echo again. Rewind as many times as you need in order to see her rotation. Yet how does this elegant lady work? Well, wuwa Forte screens are absolute yapfest, so I'll help make them more digestible by cutting them down to their necessary details. Carlotta's basic attacks on their own will deal 2 basic Glacio strikes. When she has crystal stacks, each basic she does will consume 1 stack, dealing Glacio damage to the enemy. Note that you won't really be using this in an actual rotation. It's mostly nice for the overworld where you won't always have energy to cast your ultimate. As for her skill, she'll deal some Glacio damage to the enemy and apply a debuff onto them. She also gains 3 crystal stacks. This debuff is called Dispersion, and will immobilize enemies into crystal for 1.5 seconds. If you press her skill again quickly after initially using it, she'll consume all of her crystal stacks and deal Glacio damage. As for her Liberation, she'll immediately deal a nuke of Glacio damage, then enter a special state. When in this special state, she can do up to 4 mega powered up gun blasts. You can see the counter for each blast down below, and when you completely fill up the gun blast gauge, your 5th blast will completely annihilate the enemy with a special finisher move. Enemies hit in the initial blast of her ult get deconstruction applied to them. You'll ignore 18% of enemy death when attacking enemies with this applied to them. Certainly one of the most stylish ultimate attacks in all of Wuthering Waves. Her intro skill isn't anything to write home about. She just deals some Glacio damage in a fancy way. Its main value is generating substance and crystals for her, which is linked to her Forte circuit. We'll touch on that soon. The same goes for her outro skill. As for her Forte circuit, strap in, since there's a lot to explain here. Every 22 seconds, she'll gain a tinted crystal. You can tell whether you have it or not if you have a red crystal in the middle of your Forte bar. When you have tinted crystal and your substance bar is full, you can cast her all-powerful Forte heavy attack, which reduces her skill's cooldown by 6 seconds. As for substance itself, for starters, she can hold up to 120 points of it at a time, and she can't gain substance while in her special ult state. She gains substance from either consuming her crystal stacks or through casting her intro skill. Moldable crystals can be gained in many ways. Through her basic stage 2, using her heavy attack, using her mid-air attack, using her intro skill, using her resonance skill, and through performing successful dodges. As for her inherent skills, simple. Her I1 makes her invulnerable during her skill's mid-air attack. Super nice gameplay-based quality of life. This keeps her from feeling way too fragile. The reduced flight stamina consumption is highly welcome as well. As for Carlotta's I4, she'll now be able to apply deconstruction through many other means. Remember, that's an 18% def ignore for Carlotta. As for Carlotta's Forte priority, simple, go for this. You can ignore the rest of her abilities as leveling them up won't be relevant to your damage output. You're free to level her basic attacks if you feel like they would be useful to you in the overworld, but from an endgame standpoint, you'll be fine with this. Know that most of her damage counts as skill damage. However, her ult still has its own scalings, so it's very worth leveling up too. The Montellis certainly aren't a family that you want to cross, so perhaps to get onto their good side, you might consider offering up some generous donations. In such a case, let's talk sequences. A nice damage increase through means of offering her more valuable stats. The extra substance is also appreciated. Not a killer S1 or anything like that, but definitely a good one. This jacks up her burst nuke by a stupidly high amount. If you thought that she was strong before, then to say that you'll be pleased by this upgrade is an understatement. A solid S3 that adds some extra damage into your kit while also boosting her multipliers. Nothing much to add here, it's solid. More skill bonus is always appreciated, considering that it's the main meat of Carlotta's kit. Good stuff. Another huge multiplier increase, so more damage as you would expect. Impressive stuff. Obviously this is strong, because it's an S6. To evaluate it in terms of the whale meta, it's below the likes of Jinchi and Camellia's S6, but it's definitely still a pretty good S6 on a DPS. It clears all of your Jinzo DPSs at S6, that much is for sure, but I think it'd be wiser to say for the next Sentinel Resonator's S6, unless you're a big Carlotta fan, which, by the way, you're hella freaking based if you are. In terms of high Astrite-based investment, I would chase Jojo first, then her signature weapon, then only go for sequences if you really want them. They're amazing, but they aren't as busted as Camellia's, for instance. Stop at S2 if you insist on getting more copies of her. Carlotta is the perfect Wuthering Waves character. Everything about her appeals to me greatly. She's gorgeous, elegant, powerful, feisty, and ice type, and a really fun character to play. Definitely one of the best character designs that Kuro has ever cooked up. Consider me to be one of her biggest fans. I have nothing but good things to say about her. Certainly let me know about what you think of her down below. Did she meet your expectations? I'd love to hear your thoughts. As always, I have a ZZZ second channel. Head on over and subscribe if you're interested in some fun, silly ZZZ content. Hopefully this video was able to get your Carlotta gunning down her enemies with a smug smile. This has been Juiced, signing out, and man, I'm really predictable, aren't I? No wonder she's my new favorite in wuwa. She's basically this game's Kafka.